name's Aaron. This is a YouTube channel I wanted to make to discuss my personal story from faith to no faith. When I was younger, my parents sent me to Sunday school. For those that don't know, Sunday school is usually either the pre-church or sometimes during church activity that kids go to. So my Sunday school started at 10:30 on Sunday and lasted for about 40 minutes. Between 11:10 and 11:30, there was like a break where a lot of parents came afterwards, after Sunday school, picked up their kids and went home. A lot of parents, however, picked up their kids and then went to church, which started at 11:30 and lasted for another hour. I guess I was fortunate in some ways because my parents didn't make me go to church again. I was picked up and went home. Kids that went to church, they not only went to church, but during church they were then taken out of church halfway through and they went to their own separate thing during church. If you think about that, that was three different things that the kids were being taught every Sunday. You went to Sunday school, you were taught something, say Noah's Ark, and then you went to church and you heard something about, I don't know, another part of the Bible. And then you went out of that church and you went to another room or another couple of rooms and you learned something else that was focused on another part of the Bible. So it's quite overwhelming for 2 hours, where from the ages of 4 to about 10 or 11, you could potentially have 3 different Bible stories hit at you every Sunday. My parents didn't go to church. I was sent to Sunday school purely out of generational or family obligation. I should say my mum and dad are from different religions. However, they're both Christian religions. My mum is from the Roman Catholic tradition, and my dad is from the Presbyterian tradition, which is very heavily influential around here. And so my mum, being a married-in woman, she wanted me to be the best little Presbyterian I could be. And I remember talking to a former Sunday school helper years later, and she always said that I was the best dressed boy going to Sunday school. My mum, I think she felt a bit like she had to make me the best dressed. She had to send me out looking the best. Because even though she was Catholic and not Presbyterian, even though she wasn't part of the church, she had to make sure that I was seen to be as well looked after and as sparkling and as shiny as possible. Only for a Sunday. Every other day I was well enough dressed, but I wasn't as well dressed as what I was on a Sunday. So I went to Sunday school for years. I'm an only child. When I went to Sunday school, it was another way for me to make friends, which was great. When I was growing up during this time between the ages of 4 to 11, my mum and dad worried about me a bit because I was an only child and because I was quite introverted in some ways. I was very extroverted whenever I was around certain people that I knew and certain friends that I knew, which was great. But when I came home, I could be quite introverted, playing PlayStation, playing with Pokemon cards, and even just reading. So my mum and dad always tried to get me to join things that I didn't necessarily like. I remember they signed me up for karate and mum and dad said, okay, you're going to join the karate. Do you want to join? I said yes, out of obligation. They paid for it. I never went back. They signed me up for Boys Brigade as well, a local one, not the one that was linked to my church, but a local one because the church was a bit far away. And this was usually on at night time and sometimes my dad was working. And again, I really was overwhelmed by all the stimuli there and didn't really enjoy the activity that much. I felt like I was being abandoned in some way and I didn't appreciate that. And it was also in the middle of the town where I grew up and I felt very claustrophobic there. Where I really excelled making friends was usually in the countryside where my grandparents lived and there was loads of kids around there and it was a lot more free, and that's really where I excelled. But mum and dad couldn't get me there all the time because it was a bit far away. And they tried their best, they really did. In hindsight, if I was asking my mum and dad to sign me up for an activity, I probably would have requested gymnastics. However, at the age of 7 or 8, when I heard about this girl in my primary school class going to gymnastics, I didn't actually know boys could go. But yeah, that would have been great, but it wasn't something I was signed up for. Another activity I would have loved to have been signed up for was computer classes or something to do with computers, because I was always very good with computers. And that's now actually the field that I work in. But alas, my mum and dad didn't know those kind of things existed, which is fine. That's the way it is. But mum and dad were always very keen to get me to go to church because purely out of generational responsibilities, my dad's mum was very keen for me to always go to church, or always go to Sunday school. Not necessarily go to church, but always go to Sunday school. And so I went, and it was fine. My mum and dad had no real obligations apart from going to Sunday school, and that was that. In the church that I went to, there is no additional requirements until you're the age of 16. I know in the Roman Catholic tradition there is other requirements, such as First Holy Communion, First Confession, etc. None of that. There was no requirements for that. When I got to the age of 11 or 12, I was at the age where I was able to go to the youth club that was organised by the church, and it was on Saturday evenings. A friend of mine from school was going, and I said to my mum about going, and she was very keen. Previous to that, I had been also attending, again, a bit more forcefully from my parents, sea cadets. I don't really enjoy going in cold water. I don't really know why my mum and dad felt the need to sign me up to sea cadets. It was a very regimented, very strict environment. And when you're at school all day and then you finish up and then go to sea cadets twice a week, I believe it was. Yeah, it wasn't really me. When I went to the youth club at the church though on a Saturday evenings, it was great fun. There was 1 hour of games where we just played loads of games, volleyball, hockey, just running around being crazy, but in a much more, not subdued, but a much more communal environment where the people there were a mix, girls and boys. I don't think I've ever excelled well where single sex environments exist. And it was a lot of fun. After that, we had a break. We went to like the tuck shop, which is just where you go and buy sweets, drinks, whatever. And then we had some sort of Bible study or something like that, or someone from some organization would come in and tell us about what they do. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. At that point, I think my interest was starting to peak about Christianity and about what everything was about and how the world came into being and why are we here and what is out there and what's happening in the world and just all these really big questions that, all of a sudden, oh, okay, this does kind of make sense with the Bible, and here's some answers. And the people that were running the youth club were great, they were really fun and they were cool. And so you want to really join and be part of that as well. And so I went for a few years and I started to identify as a Christian. I remember I prayed the Lord's Prayer and asked Jesus to come into my heart at the age of 14. Something happened during that time though where I was being a Christian, yes, but then I also remember that I went the other way as well. I started to smoke cigarettes with some other friends outside this group, and that was a lot of fun as well. It wasn't a lot of fun smelling like cigarettes all the time, but it was a lot of fun being with them. They were chaotic and fun and free, and it was just an absolute blast. I did, however, make a choice eventually that I was like, no, smoking is disgusting. I'm not going to do it anymore, so I threw the cigarettes away. And I quit, and I did quit hard. But during this time as well, I also went back then really focusing on the church, and at the same time my grandfather had got access to a vehicle, so he decided to go to church on every Sunday. So rather than go from Sunday school, which at this point it was a different level, it was now called Bible class. So Sunday school was between the ages of 4 to 11, Bible class was between the ages of 11 to 16. So yeah, I was going to Bible class before church, and then I went and just sat with my granda in the church. And yeah, so I was really heavily involved in terms of attendance with the youth club and with church and Bible class, and everything was going pretty well. I think around this time as well, I started to have inclinations of my homosexuality. I did date a few girls, but it never felt right. I always felt quite disgusted when I kissed them, and it just always felt very icky. It was never correct, and that's just the way it is. But because of my Christian understanding of homosexuality and myself and who I was meant to be, I felt so bad. And I prayed for quite a while that these feelings would go away. I prayed that I would be able to meet just one girl that I could just be with. I also signed up at the time to a online course. The online course was a 60-day course that I did every day, usually after school, Monday to Friday, and then Saturdays and Sundays, just whenever. And it was called Setting Captives Free. I remember at the time that this sounded really good because I was like, okay, 60 days is all I need to do online and I'll be free. And so I got into it. 60 days came and went, and I wasn't free from homosexuality. Now, to be fair, the course did not promise freedom from homosexuality. The course promised more in a non-tangible way freedom from the hook of homosexuality, if that makes sense. And so I did it, and I was really relieved when it was finished because it was so long. 60 days, it's only 2 months, but whenever you're going to school and then you're coming home and you feel like you have to do this before your parents get home in case they see it as well, it's all very overwhelming. And the content was quite overwhelming as well. It was a 60-day really intense Bible study, and it was intense. And you had to fill out answers as you were doing it. I don't really know why, but you had to fill out answers. Maybe it was so you could read them back after. I can't remember. So yeah, I was doing that, and I was going to church, and the people at church were great. People at youth club were great. Honestly, I have no bad memories really from the church. Nothing scandalous to report. But something was always there that just wasn't sitting right, and it just never really felt okay. Whenever I was 16, I got the opportunity to go abroad for a few weeks to do missionary exchange work with several people from the church. It was a great experience for me. We went to Romania, and then next year actually as well we went to Latvia. So it was 2 years of going abroad. And essentially we were going to do missionary work and to do some useful stuff, but also to run a kids camp as well. It was a very interesting experience because I guess the whole point of it was to, live your faith in a foreign country, in a foreign land. Still within Europe for me, so it was very convenient. And it was good, but looking back on it now, I do have a lot of mixed thoughts about that. And I don't want to talk about that too much in this video. I might make another video about that. But yes, it does leave a bit of a sour taste right now. And so, yeah, that was different ways I was living my faith and trying to live my faith. And I was also helping out during the summer with the summer camps and stuff where possible. I also had part-time jobs, so it was trying to fix everything together. When I went to university, I ended up living in a Christian accommodation with about 60 other people, I think, all similar age. So that was great as well, really good. I loved the communal aspect of it. I loved just being with other people who were young, Christian. But again, the homosexuality never went away, obviously. I did come out to some friends and say, look, I have this. So I didn't come out and say I was gay, because to come out and say you're gay is a very different thing than to say I have, well, what I'm going to say now is I have same-sex attraction. Same-sex attraction is what a lot of Christians previously, and even still today probably, would use to describe homosexuality. Same-sex attraction is when you have same-sex attraction, but it is said so that the person will know, I'm not saying I'm gay, because to be gay is to accept a lifestyle. I'll happily say I'm gay now because not only have I accepted a lifestyle, that's just who I am. I have same-sex attraction. I am a homosexual. I am gay. I'm also a really just great person in general. But going back, so yeah, I came out whenever I was at university to say to some close friends, yeah, I have same-sex attraction. I said to my friends as well, I'm probably going to be celibate for the rest of my life because I can't marry a girl. It just wouldn't be fair. And I also don't want to. Like, it wouldn't work out. So I just got to be celibate for the rest of my life. And for a lot of people that were in relationships at the time, and they were also just, they were everywhere. You could see them. Um, in, lovely, cozy, committed Christian relationships, it was a bit hard to see sometimes. But that was the cross I bore, so I got on with it. That was for the first 2 years of university, and it was okay. It was hard at times, it was easier sometimes, but that's what it was. For my third year of university, I actually got the chance to study abroad. This time it was actually in America. So I went to America, Massachusetts, just for geographical purposes, so quite a liberal area. I was going to a Catholic liberal arts college. When I was there, I thought, okay, this place will be a wee bit different than my current setup, with like a lot of Presbyterian influence. But Catholicism, yeah, sure, they believe different stuff, but it'll be maybe very still very Catholic and very religious in some ways. I could not have been more wrong. That place was very liberal, very liberal indeed. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And again, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but let's just say whenever I was there, I changed a lot as a person. I started going to gay clubs there. I had a few encounters there, and honestly, it was probably a very eye-opening experience that I'm glad I had. And yeah, I can't look back at the experience unfondly, because yeah, it was just a wonderful thing for it to happen to me, and I'm so glad I went. When I came back, all I could think of was, oh, I gotta go back to America. I gotta go back to America. And I did try, but it just didn't work out. And then I got stuck more back into my own university and started studying again for my final year of university here, which was, I needed to graduate. But when I came back, I was liberated and I was, living my life as a gay man for a few months. But after the start of university, I started to feel again very different, very isolated in some ways. I think I was feeling isolated because I was still hanging out with the friends I had made prior to going to America. So still a lot of Christian friends. And I could feel a greater disconnect than before. Before I left for America, there was always a disconnect there in terms of, I'm gay. So there was always a bit of a disconnect there. When I came back, and I still kind of wanted to be their friends, and just because they were great people, but I didn't want all this judgment or all this like second guessing and stuff. And yeah, it just didn't work. It just didn't feel right. But I remember just sitting in bed one night, and I was like, this just doesn't feel right. I don't know what to do. And then I remember going to the bathroom, and I just felt so overwhelmed by God, and I didn't know why. And I just felt like he was calling me. And again, I can't describe it now, it doesn't make sense. But then I remember walking along the middle of the road to where my friend was living, and I just says to him, like, I think God's calling me back. And he was so happy about it. And yeah, that was it. God had called me back. I was back. And that was it. I got back into going to church. I stuck with the Christian group again. It was great. After university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I signed up to do a Teach English as a Foreign Language 1 month intensive course. I did that, and then I decided to apply for some places. I've always felt that going abroad and being a Christian abroad is a really exotic experience. I think that was why I was drawn to the Teaching English as a Foreign Language, the TEFL, in the first place. I think that's why whenever I went to Romania and Latvia, I really felt as though you were doing God's work more than what you were doing here. And so when I applied for several places, and I got acceptance to go to a place in China, I was like, oh, sweet, this will be really good. Especially China, because it's so restricted in expression and stuff. So I thought it'd be really good to see. And who knows what will happen. So I went and again went to church there, found some Christians, all Westerners, obviously. And it was great. Made some good friends and had a great time. However, whenever I was there, I did have some issues with not my actual employer, but my employer contracted me out to a school, and one of the head teachers really didn't like me. I think my first lesson was really bad because it was with kids, and I had never taught kids before. I'd only taught adults, and I had no real idea of their expectations. And once you have a bad impression with someone, sometimes that never leaves them. So yeah, she really wanted rid of me. And this just created a lot of stress for me as well because I'd never been fired or underperformed like this before. So I was really, awful. So I just ended up coming home. I wasn't feeling in the right space. When I came home, I actually applied for a master's eventually and got on well with it. And then I got a job in my current employment. I've been there 10 years as a software developer. So everything was going great. Obviously, China sounds like a blip, but yeah, it was an experience and I made some good friends there. Two of the friends actually came over and we did a road trip around Ireland and Scotland, and again, so much fun. Another friend actually, she was German and she got married and I went over to the wedding and ended up driving her to her wedding in a rented 7-seater family carrier vehicle. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it was great. So yeah, I've had a great time, and I was still a Christian, and I was having a great job, great opportunities were coming my way. I was living with a friend, everything was going really well. About a year after I started my job, I wasn't sure what exactly was happening, but I got a bit depressed and I felt very numb. And I never felt like this before. It was all very new to me. And I didn't know what to do. I was very confused. And so whenever I was sitting in work one day, I came home to my apartment. And I remember just calling my dad and I was like crying on the phone to him. And I just said to him, Dad, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. And he just said, you need to go speak to a doctor. And that was not the reaction I was expecting. But I called my GP, my general practitioner. I made an appointment and I went and spoke to him. And I made a list of what was on my mind, and I still have the list on my phone. But yeah, one of the things was, I'm a homosexual that's not acting on their desires, and it's painful. And so, whenever I said that to him, he recommended a group called Rainbow for counseling. And I thought, oh gosh, they're going to be really gay and really not my point of view. They're going to be really gay. And I was really scared. I was like, this is going to challenge my faith. This is going to break me. This is going to be so many bad things for me. But I went for it. I went for the counseling. I should say, by the way, a few weeks prior to this, I used to go to church with my aunt, and a few weeks prior to this, I said to her, "Can we just not go?" Because I just was not feeling it. So it had been a bit of a trajectory to this point. And I went to the counseling, and thankfully there were tissues on the table in the middle because yeah, they were used. By me. And yeah, I just told them everything. I told them, about my religion, my faith, everything that I more or less have said now. and how I can't reconcile the two. I can't reconcile faith and who I am. And he was very understanding. He was a great counselor. He just listened and listened and listened. The more I spoke, the more I realized that I can't keep living a life where I have to deny myself. It's so difficult. It's virtually impossible. And I think, honestly, that people who say they can are able to do it in such a way that they don't have to deny too much of themselves. I think when you're gay and you're expected to deny a part of yourself that is so paramount, it's your sexual being, it's destroying, absolutely destroying. And prior to this as well, the year I was actually in America, it was the year when there was a lot of YouTube videos coming out about It Gets Better because of the number of suicides among gay teenagers. And so I've been aware of that, and I've always thought, gosh, who could do that? But the closer it came to it, the closer it came to me realizing I could have done that because it was so destroying, so debilitating. And so the counselor was amazing, and I went through the process for quite a few weeks and a lot of soul searching on myself and talking to my parents and just explaining. It's worth bearing in mind my parents are not religious. This religion thing did not come from them. It possibly came from them because they made me go to church in the first place, but the seeking of answers has always been my issue. My grandmother always said when I was younger, I always asked why. So I've always wanted to know more. I've always been inquisitive. I've always been wanting to get more information about why things are the way they are. And so for me, religion provided an answer, or so I thought. After the counseling and coming out to friends as gay, no more same-sex attraction, just gay, I stopped going to church, primarily because I couldn't deal with the pressure of going to church. I couldn't deal with the judgment, not necessarily the judgment from people, but just the judgment within myself from this religious text that I would feel. And I just needed a break. It was so refreshing, and it still kind of is, to wake up on a Sunday morning and not to feel obligated to do anything. It's just nice to wake up on a Sunday morning, just know that it's part of the weekend and you can just relax and not feel burdened by an expectation of going to church. And it's a really beautiful thing to do that. I'm not saying you have to sit in your pajamas all day. You can if you want, but it's a really beautiful thing to do. Coming out to my friends was a very positive experience for the most part. Most of my friends had no issue with it, even though they were deeply committed Christians, and that was great. Probably my best friend, his reaction was probably the worst. I told him actually that I, by that point, had a boyfriend, and we were driving to a friend's house, and he turned around and says, I don't agree with it. And I was just like, okay, but I'm not telling you to ask you if you agree with it, I'm just telling you what's happening. And that was that. Since then, he has mellowed a lot. I give credit to his wife for that. I think, and also just the fact that he's a lot older now as well, and that he has a lot more life experience, the same as I have, so I don't hold anything against him. Another friend who I haven't actually seen since, but that's more of just a coincidence, I guess, just because we move in different circles now. When I told her, I was surprised because I knew she had a lot of gay friends already, and I thought she would be very supportive, despite the fact she was a Christian. And her reaction was probably the worst, because she said, I've seen them do things and I know what they get up to. And I was like, I'm still me very much in every way. But also, if your friends are getting up to stuff that you don't agree with, why are you friends with them? Like, why are you friends with these people that you're just going to judge behind their backs? But yeah, we haven't talked in years, but it doesn't matter. I don't hold any grudges. If I met her down the street, I would happily chat to her and, you know, like old times. But yeah, so coming out was a really positive process. There were some people I didn't get to come out to because they'd since passed away, like one set of grandparents, for example. But that's okay. The people I've came out to now has been really good and really important. So I'm glad. Um, Thankfully, working where I do as well, being out has not been an issue, and I'm very proud that I'm able to hold my own and stand up for the situation that I'm in, that I am gay and that I work here. I'm also a very good worker, so don't think because I'm gay that that's who I am. I'm a damn good worker, so I am. That's first and foremost. Going from there, then I had some good experiences, some neutral experiences, some bad experiences. But overall, it's been a positive experience. Overall, I have came to a point at that time, which was about 8 years ago, where I didn't go to church. I felt relieved. I was happy, and I was content. And then some crazy things happened. And this makes it sound really melodramatic, but I think it's important to say then, because so many crazy things have happened since, that I think are just worth saying. And I do want this YouTube channel to be about, faith and religion, and, you know, homosexuality, LGBT stuff. But I think it's also important to mention some stories that have happened since as well that are very important and just so amazingly unexpected. After coming out, I was going through some friends and telling them. So one friend I met in a Starbucks, and we actually used to go for dinner quite a lot. Me and her and another friend. We used to go for dinner quite a lot. And this is one of the friends I made from my time living in Presbyterian accommodation at university. And I told her what had happened and how I was going to counselling, etc., and just everything. And after I told her, she said to me, my friend Beth. And I was like, yeah, I've seen them shopping before, like grocery shopping, because I knew they lived together in like an apartment because they were both studying for their PhDs. And yeah. And she was like, I've been dating her for a year. And so at that point, I felt so stupid because I didn't realize, but also I felt so terrible. My friend had been dating someone, another girl, for so long, and we had been meeting up quite often, and she didn't tell me because she was afraid that I would judge her. And she wasn't wrong. I probably would have judged her. In fact, I'm 99% sure I would have. I'm 99% sure I would have felt so uncomfortable by it that I would have been like, oh, let's not hang out anymore. And that made me feel really bad, because I was so committed to living this untarnished, untainted Christian life that I couldn't be associated with that. Obviously in work, I talked to gay people and that was expected, but I was never friendly with a lot of gay people, and that was, because that was personal life, that was where I could practice my faith better. And so, yeah, she told me that, and I still to this day feel bad about that. I feel bad about that. We're still friends. We communicate on Instagram sometimes, but I still feel bad about that. They no longer live here. They actually immigrated together. They're now married. And yeah, I wish them all the best, and I hopefully see them again soon. Another experience I had with a friend I had lived with in the Presbyterian University accommodation was a good friend of mine, and he had been dating this girl as well for years, and yeah, and he actually went to another country as well for a year to do like mission work, teaching and stuff, all that kind of work rolled into one. And yeah, he came back and he was then working for a local church, but then he decided, okay, I'm going to apply to be a primary school teacher. Primary school teaching here is very competitive. There's not very many options, so he decided to go to England for that opportunity, which he did, and was successful at that, got into it and stuff. And then I started to notice some pictures with a certain person always nearby, like a guy, and I was wondering who this guy was. I was like, oh, they must just be friends. And then it transpired that they actually went on holiday together as well. Um, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, fair enough. I honestly thought, again, this was kind of before me coming out and going to counseling and stuff. I honestly thought that the other friend was also a teacher and they went on holiday together because of the holiday schedule and maybe it was more convenient. I honestly thought that because, again, my friend had dated a girl for years, so I had no real expectation of him being in any way gay. So yeah, I'm not even sure how he told me, to be honest. I just know that they are now living together in a house and very much a couple. But yeah, like, so crazy as well. There's other people as well from that accommodation, that very Christian Presbyterian accommodation, that have since came out. I have seen them in gay clubs, I have seen them at pride marches, I have seen them in different places with their partners, sometimes not with their partners. And yeah, they are very much like me. They have went through a process of being a Christian, being committed, and now at a point where they realize that they are gay. I don't know every single person's individual circumstance. I haven't asked any of them really, or most of them, because for them to tell me, it can sometimes be quite painful. And as I've had the experience of going to counseling, I've already went through that, and it can be quite painful. My friend who had been dating her girlfriend for over a year, as she was telling me her story, she was also telling me about her family not being overly accepting. And so I actually recommended for her to go to the same counselling, which she did, and she was very appreciative of that because whilst my family were very accepting, her family were not, and those situations can get very messy. So yeah, it was a very interesting time for me, for a lot of people, and I wanted to start this YouTube video channel because I know there's so many people that hide themselves away in churches, and because they feel like they have to. This is from my personal experience. And it's so hard to understand why you're made wrong. It's so hard to understand why God has done this to you. It's so hard to understand why you have to avoid a sexual part of you as a sexual being, despite, gay marriage being legalized and everyone knowing homosexual bullying is wrong, and everyone knowing that there's genetic components to homosexuality. Why are people that are born a certain way not allowed to be a whole person? I was inspired to make this video having watched some videos by former Christians. I'm making this video now not necessarily because of the homosexual dynamic, but more because recently I've been on a thought process about where my current agnosticism lies. I was always scared to say I'm an atheist because I think to be an atheist means you have to have a certain amount of belief in nothing. Not as in nothing, but as in no thing out there. As an agnostic, it was always my use of the word to mean I don't know, because I'll never know. I'll never know what's out there. I think that's the same for everyone. However, when I watch these videos with former Christians talking about how they came to the realization that belief is not a scientifically replicable event, and how weird it is as a concept, I think it's just such a much bigger conversation that needs to be had. And I think that's why I wanted to do this video. I want to talk about my beliefs and how I came from X to Y. How I went from being this really committed Christian who, when I was younger, used to think my faith was unmovable. And now I'm at a point where I'm not there at all. But I'm also so glad for it. I feel like burdens have been released from me. I feel like such a better person inside. I feel such a much less judgmental person and a much more fulfilled person. I look around me and see people that adhere to religion, and whilst I respect everyone's views and everyone's ability to partake in religious ceremonies and religious belief, I really just hope that so many of those people also have the same opportunities I do to explore other beliefs, but also non-belief as well. And to know that just because you come from a certain religion doesn't mean to say you have to stay with it, but also that it's okay to question it as well. I think I'll end the video here because I don't know what else to say before starting a much longer discussion about something else. I have no idea what I'm going to call this video. Obviously, if you've got to this point, I have probably given it some sort of title. If I had to think of a title right now, it might be How a Believer Came to Unbelief or something like that. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate any comments below, good or bad, negative, positive, just to let me know what you think. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. If you're experiencing same-sex attraction and you are still within a Christian faith or a church, please reach out. There are so many people like us who have been through this before. Don't feel alone. Don't feel that you have to make dramatic decisions. My journey from going to church every Sunday to leaving wasn't just a snapshot, it was a progressive process. And it's worth going through that process in a longer period of time rather than going from I'm just making a snap decision and then regretting not having thought about the implications, but also thought about your own personal philosophies as well. I hope that makes sense. And again, I thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you're all well, and I look forward to making another one. Bye.